Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where frontline sales leaders teach you how to build and scale an outbound sales team. All right. Well, today we're talking about how to maximize your return on investment at SaaStr's. So maybe I should do a quick introduction of Lloyd and then myself, and we can get going. So I've known Lloyd for a long time. Probably one of the people, other than our VP of marketing, that knows the most about conferences and the sort of the sphere I go around in. Because Lloyd doesn't do any selling, doesn't do any marketing. He's very, very lazy, except for when it comes to conferences, and then he's just like on it.
Yeah.
So
people don't realize the power of events. Most of what we do at Boast is event marketing. So what Boast does is we automate the complicated process of getting R&D tax incentives from the government. We sell to CEOs and CFOs, and they're not searching for a specialized tax service. So it's like, how do I get in their minds before they're searching? And so we do our own big conference, Traction, in Vancouver. And then we partner with almost every major conference, and we have presence there. And then around the conference, we do CEO events and so on. So like a big fan of events.
That's awesome, man. And how many people do you draw into Traction every year?
So Traction is capped at 1,000. Last year, we actually turned away people because it's just getting too big for we don't have an events team. It's managed between us and then Launch Academy, capacity of the organizers running it. And the end goal is to connect with really high quality people, founders, CEOs, CXOs. And if that's the end goal, then there's only so many you can fit in there, right? And then I'm on the advisory committee of SaaStr's. So I work very closely with Jason and the Growth Marketing Conference, and also Elevate in Toronto. And those are sort of bigger conferences, and I get that itch out of the way by not using my team to deal with with the giant logistical nightmare. I think getting speakers and doing content is the easier task. Managing the logistics is harder. So we made a conscious decision to say, let's cap it at 1,000. Let's keep doing it at a venue that can accommodate and max out at that. And then spend all the money in providing a better experience. So it's not sandwiches and apples.
That's fair. So let's talk about maybe I'll do a quick intro myself first, and then I got a question for you. So I'm Collin, co-founder, co-CEO here at Predictable Revenue. We do quite a few, I wouldn't say quite a few events, but we do a few events, and SaaStr's one of the big ones. And I've threatened to not go to SaaStr's a bunch of times, and every time we go, we get a big return on our investment. But we didn't for the first couple of years because we just weren't paying attention to it. And I wrote a couple articles. We can sort of share them out after the webinar here. But basically, we're going to talk about a couple of things of why we weren't getting ROI and what changed, and sort of how we were able to sort of adapt to make sure that we were giving ourselves the best chance to actually get some money out of it. And I thought the best way we could sort of help is bring a guy onto the webinar here who knows more than most people about getting money out of conferences. Not literally extracting money from Jason, but getting a strong return on his conferences. And so, Lloyd, you're doing you do Traction, you do growth marketing, you do SaaStr's. So how many conferences a year would you say you're either hosting or involved in?
So traditionally it was the three, loosely with growth marketing, but SaaStr's and Traction heaviest involvement in the last 3-4 years, or more than that actually, since 2015. And then this year I think we'll scale up to 4 or 5. So we'll do Elevate because we did that last year. We're also bringing Growth Marketing Conference to Toronto. So it's going to end up being 5 or 6, where what we've done a really good job of with Traction is bringing the best speakers. Like logistics and everything else is something that we can always do better on, but bringing the best speakers. We've had Red Hat CEO, Qualtrics, every major CEO has been there. So that's what I use as my sort of social capital and leverage with other conferences, and say, if you get me on your advisory committee, I'll do this for you. I'll produce content, and you can give me a sponsorship in exchange. So I don't even pay for any of the sponsorships. We have a big booth at SaaStr's, growth marketing, etc. We're co-presenting on growth marketing, and we never paid for a dime of it. right? Because it's like, hey, if you built an expertise around something, then like leverage it, right? So that's what we're doing this year. And then what I found, and I'll dive a little bit into it later, is even 1,000-person conference. When you compare it to SaaStr's, it's very small. But even 1,000-person conference for your sales team to navigate is very, very difficult. And so we've done things even at Traction to break it up so we can get ROI from it.
So I think I'd love to know of all of your demand gen activities, what percentage of business does your conference activities bring in for you?
So I would say a good 40% is from conference activities.
That's great. And you're not like the regular, like the rest of us that you're paying for the sponsorships. You're getting on these steering committees and you're saying, hey, I'm going to bring speakers, and that's how you sort of get involved that way.
Yeah. And you know what? That's like Blaine's complaining and whining here saying, stop wasting my time and pitching yourself. We're not really pitching ourselves, right? We're just saying like how one of the ways of getting value from a conference really is to give your time there, right? And that's a big thing. Once you start giving your time to conferences, to different things, is that's where you become a part of the inside crowd. And that's what I found. Like in the early days, I would have to pay for every conference and pay for a sponsorship, and that was a big pain. And so then I started giving my time and doing things at the conference. And once I started giving my time there is when you start becoming seen as an insider and you get an inside track. So we'll cover more of that. And sorry, not meaning to waste your time here, Blaine.
Yeah, and that's my bad. I was mostly just curious about all the things you do, so we can sort of set the stage before we jump into some of the tactical things. And so when you're going to like an event like SaaStr's, what are some things that you're trying to do to stand out?
Yeah, so a few things, right? And I'll tell you that what we did in the past years that didn't sort of work, and some of the things we've changed year over year. So before, when we started, we'd just go to the conference, we'd try to meet people there, and like not very deliberate, like it's stuff happening at the conference. And we had a booth, right? And then the following year, what we did was we got like no engagement. The following year, what we did was we did something better. We did like a photo booth, right? It was not as great, but we did a photo booth, and we try to see how we could engage people who came there. And that even sucked, right? So then in the last few years, I think we nailed it. What we started doing was they have an event app with everyone on there, right? And we go through that event app in detail and see who we want to connect with. We see everyone who comes to that event, and we have a good view of that. And it's not just me, it's like a team of people going through it and seeing who all. Then we build that up and we figure out who is, it all starts from your ideal customer profile, right? If you're going to a conference, you need to know what is the number one goal you're going there for. If it is to get leads, then figure out who your ideal customer profile is, map those titles out, go through the app and figure out who all are coming. And then what we started doing was doing curated events for those people. So this year we're doing an invite-only CEO event, and we invited everyone through the app. Most people are coming. Now check this out. If you have your SDR team inviting people to an exclusive event that they wouldn't otherwise have access to, or a dinner, or like founders dinner or whatever, they're more likely to respond and they're more likely to come. And we've had massive success with that. The other thing, what we did in the past years is co-hosting parties. And the important thing here is not doing it with yourself. Like find 3 or 4 or 5 other people that have sort of bigger brand names than yourself, align with them, and then collectively send the invites, and you'll get the list. Like the event we're doing right now, right? Is gathering people and creating engagement before the conference. So we found that like before going to the conference even, we go through the app in detail, we see who all we want to meet. And there's few opportunities. One, you could just host a private dinner for a small group of people. You could partner with a bunch of people and host some private events and invite them. That is much better than saying like, I'm right now getting pitched on 100 times. I'm like, literally today I had 32 or so emails from people saying, hey, let's meet at SaaStr's, buy my product, right? Instead of that, if you invite somebody to a roundtable discussion or a dinner, or the other most awesome thing they have is the brain date thing with the Brella app. Download it, post a brain date, and not only post a brain date and wait there, then go and see all the people on the app that you want to invite, right? Or could be potential clients or partners for you, and then send them invites to the brain date. And they're more likely to come. It ends up being a good discussion. And those are a few ways to have the conversation going. It's not like, it's like dating. You don't go to a bar and say, hey, marry me, right? You're like trying to get the phone number and get to the next date. And so it's like, get that first conversation going. And I found that inviting people to something, whether it's a brain date, which we've done, whether it's a private dinner, which we're also doing, whether it's a private party in partnership with other people. So they're like, oh, it's not just a vendor, but there's some awesome people there, or it's very agnostic conversation. That's been huge success. And like last year, we generated a couple million in pipeline just from doing that.
So talk to me
that this year.
That's super awesome. A couple $1 million in pipeline. So talk to me about the numbers that you're expecting. Like, are you doing 100 brain dates? Are you trying to get 1,000 people at your event? Are you doing 10 roundtables? Like, can you give me some metrics here?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll tell you last year what we did, because this year is yet to come together, but we're still doing the same thing. Last year we did a founders party. We sell to founder. We partnered with a couple of groups that sold to founders as well, and VCs and so on. And we had around, I would say, like north of 700 people circle through there, which is huge. I think we did it with Lighter Capital, or I forget who, but like folks who sold to the similar market. And all I got was the bar tab, which was significant because you split it with 3-4 people. Right. And that worked extremely well. There's 700 people who circled through it, and they wanted to meet specific people. At the end of the day, at these conferences and events, if you want to build relationships, you got to be the guy that connects people. Right. And so that event worked really well for us. And our outbound automation, the flow was essentially invite people to the event. Right. And then send 2 follow-ups. Another follow-up was reminding them to come to the event if they didn't register. And then the third follow-up was saying, here's the list of people coming, right? And so they know, and that creates that FOMO, and then they want to come. Then we did some brain dates, and we did a curated dinner. The dinner was a dinner and roundtable discussions with founders and VCs. And we partnered with a few incubators and VCs, and we all threw in on the bill. And that was about 100 or so people. So you got the event that gets you sort of 700-800 people, and then you do the dinner, which is even more curated, and the brain date is even more curated from there. And everything starts with inviting them, a follow-up on did they get the invite, and a follow-up on here's who all is coming. And then after the event, it switches your sequence to, hey, thanks for coming. We didn't get a chance to connect, or we connected. And then it goes from there. Now, the thing is, the most important thing is it starts with your ICP and people you want to invite. So the people who come to our dinner or the events, the party or the brain dates are people we wanted to invite. So we put in a lot of effort going through that app.
And so all of your outreach is through that app?
It's not through that app. It's not 100% through that app right now. I'm getting into like gray area here, but like you can go through the app. You can see who you want to connect with. If you message on the app, I'm not 100% sure they'll all respond. Yeah. You can email them. Mm-hmm. You can have your SDRs figure out their emails, email them. You can send them LinkedIn messages, right? Yeah. You're making sure you're not harassing them. You're sending them an invite, right? So you send them an invite. Hey, Collin, we're hosting this invite-only private dinner with Sierra Ventures and DFJ. I'd love to have you there. There's going to be 80 founders and like 20 VCs. Can you make it? Right. And then you don't respond. I'm like following up, and then you don't respond. Hey, Collin, not sure I heard from you, but here's the link with everyone who's coming. And you're like, oh, there's a whole bunch of interesting people that could be clients for me too. I'm coming. That sort of thing. Right. And then when they say that, then you connect with them on LinkedIn. All of a sudden now you're a connection. They see you're posting interesting content. And then after the conference, you've shook hands with a few people You've etched your name in their minds. And then post-conference, when you follow up, it just makes it easy, right? Because now you're replying to an email that they replied to already. That's what's worked for me. You know, I don't have a magic bullet. It's unfortunately a lot of work. But in the early days, we were like, let's go to the conference, pray and pray. And that's not produced the best outcome for me, at least, right? Like one year we paid, I think the first year we did it, we paid for a big photo booth, and all kinds of people came to the photo booth. We were so excited. We had like 700, 800, 900 people roll through. And it's my mom. She's
Hi, Mom.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Okay.
So we recently had a baby. My parents are visiting SF from Toronto, and I haven't eaten all morning. So Mom brings me breakfast at like almost noon. It's funny.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. So the first year we had about like 800-900 people come to that photo booth and take photos. So that's a lot. And then when you go through it, you realize that 90% of them are garbage leads. And the 10% you wanted to talk to, because you're so focused on volume and volume and volume and volume, that you exhausted yourself trying to drive people to that photo booth. And then you didn't realize that the 10% of people you didn't even connect with, right?
You're drowning, right? Like it's so hard to differentiate. If you get a pick, like 1 in 9 is going to be a good fit. 1 in 10 is going to be a good fit. It's so hard to find. We did the same thing the first couple of years we went to SaaStr's. It was all about badge scanners, like getting as many badge scans as we possibly could. And we did crazy stuff like, we did the office or an office space theme, and we let somebody smash a printer. We did like an entry. We had a fortune teller at the booth a couple of times, and that drew crazy amounts of traffic. And we had like, 300-400 badge scans, and we got nothing out of it, just nothing. And not only did we get nothing out of it, we exhausted ourselves trying to like follow up with everybody. And there were probably a bunch of good leads that came in through that. But it's just when you're trying to put that amount of effort into 400 people and try and be timely, you can't run a high quality touch on all 400 of them. You have to sort of reduce the quality. And so what you're saying is using these events, these are like trigger events, right? So that we can say, hey, I'm being thoughtful. I think you're a VP of sales, a CEO, a CMO. I think you would enjoy this event. Why don't you come check it out?
Yeah. And people, what is the number one reason you go to events? To meet like-minded people. I know one of the guys on the Web Summit team, and he said the same thing, is all your focus goes on building curated networking events, because if they don't do that, people sort of are going to lose interest a few years from now, because after a while it ends up being like, hey, I got to go to Burning Man. It stops being that, and it starts being like, who am I going to meet, right? Like you can't leave it to serendipity. I mean, in that year where we had the photo booth, we still signed, I think, like a $75,000 or $100,000 deal out of it, and some others. But and that always looks good to marketing, because marketing typically thinks that I'm driving volume. But if you align marketing with like the way our marketing is structured, is it's not the volume, but the number of sales accepted leads, then the story changes a little bit, right? And then they're driving things that generate conversations. And we're not the geniuses of conferences and we do a lot of events and event marketing. So feel free to type in the chat window and any things that you guys are working on that you need feedback on, or maybe like opportunities for collaboration and so on.
Mm-hmm. So sort of while we're waiting for some questions to come in, so just smash that Q&A button at the bottom if you got questions, thoughts, comments. We'd love to hear it. One of the things that we started doing when we made that switch from the sort of like fortune teller at the booth, just volume, because we're one of those suckers or chumps that actually pays for a sponsorship here at SaaStr's. And so we want to make sure we get a solid return on our investment. And so what we realize is that we're a Vancouver-based small bootstrap company. We've got an office in Santa Monica. We've got some people in Cancun, but we're definitely not we're probably one of the least, well-funded companies that are there. We're surrounded by.
I thought you got a free booth because Jason and Aaron co-wrote the book. I thought otherwise. I'm wrong.
Yeah, we get favorable treatment. I'll say that, but nothing, nothing too special. And not to say we don't appreciate that, but we just want to make sure that we're driving hard to get a strong ROI. And so one of the things that we changed when we went from that sort of like, let's drive as many people to the booth to let's focus on exactly like you said, quality meetings and appointments set, is we made the realization that at the booth, I was reflecting back on the year previous, and I was like, okay, well, what went right? What went wrong? And I was remembering all the conversations, and I was almost embarrassed because I've been in sales for 15 years and like B2B sales for 15 years. And I was thinking about my conversations, and I'm thinking those weren't good sales conversations. This was just me standing, talking and rambling. I'm like, well, of course none of these are going to be, viable leads because we didn't do any rapport building. We didn't do any digging. We didn't actually like have a real conversation. It was just a bunch of people shouting, things at each other and feeling good because, oh yeah, I'm pitching and I'm winning. And so I realized like, okay, if I've been selling for 15 years and I'm struggling with this, what are the rest of the people at my booth going through that are maybe a junior salesperson or even an AE that's got 3 or 4 years experience? I bet you they're feeling some of that same pressure. And so what we did was actually we realized like, okay, we need to treat our booth like our inbound funnel, as opposed to just a bunch of people standing around. And so we had and I've got a diagram in one of the blog posts that we'll link out here, but basically we sort of, we arranged it almost like an offensive line, sort of the quarterback. This time we had multiple quarterbacks, at the back, and those are the account execs. And then our blockers were basically the SDRs, like handling the inbound. And what we did is we equipped everybody with a bit of a playbook. And when I say playbook, I mean, it was essentially like a card and like a postcard size. And it had our qualification questions on there, just simple tick boxes. And the goal isn't to stare at the card and tick off all the boxes. The goal is the card is a reminder that we're trying to qualify and hear the things that we're looking for, and not just qualify, but we want to go from like, okay, making sure this is a conversation we should have to let's get into some of the discovery, right? And so we mapped out, what our we a fit call looks like. We mapped out the different sort of quadrants that we want people sort of steering the conversations. And this had a huge impact for us. It took us from I want to say 2016 or 2015, we had 300 or 400 badge scans. And the following year we didn't focus on badge scans. I'm sure we got a few, but we had 37 cards that were properly filled out. And out of those 37 cards, we closed 7 deals within 90 days.
Wow.
Which was a huge, huge lift from the previous year where I think we only got 1 or 2.
And so when you say you filled the cards there, right? So as they were talking, they were filling out these cards, these printed cards.
Kind of. So imagine a sale, like I'm standing there at the booth.
Yeah.
And then we're having a chat and I'm starting to realize, hey, this is a real conversation with a prospect. I want to take some notes. We had a stack of them that was easily accessible. I just pull one off and say like, hey, do you mind if I take a couple of notes? And then I'd pull it off. And here, I'll do a quick screen share and just sort of show roughly what it looks like here.
And I'm curious as to why you didn't use the lead scanner versus to take these notes. And I guess it's not conducive to that format. And this is actually excellent. I'm going to screenshot this myself. Totally.
We'll share this out and like, feel free to steal it. I'll send you the template if you send me an email and ask me. And I even linked to the guy on Fiverr that we had do this for us in the article. But the reason we didn't do lead scanner or iPad or anything like that is because when you put a piece of technology between yourself and the customer, it creates this divide. Whereas what we noticed is when people were pulling up next to the booth and we'd pull up this card, we're not trying to show it off to them, but just by having this card, it's different than what every other booth is going through, because everybody else is like, hey, I want to show you a demo, or here, have some swag, or enter this draw, or check out this fortune teller, or get your picture taken. And our swag that we promised to people coming by the booth was a good conversation. And so the customers or the prospects that were coming by the booth were like, they were curious about these cards. Like, oh, tell me about these cards. And so now all of a sudden not only are we properly qualifying, but when you properly qualify and you're remembering to ask these good questions, it leads naturally into discovery, right? And people see that, hey, you're not just like everybody else at the conference that just wants to rip off a demo or just like spout off about your features. You actually want to have a good conversation. You actually want to, provide some value and have a really good conversation there. And so that they really helped us stand out here. And what we found a lot of the time is when the customers were, when we pulled them out, the customers would actually line up sort of next to us. And so instead of like facing each other, they're sort of like, they were like standing next to us and trying to help us fill out the card. Right? And they're like, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, this. And now all of a sudden we're on the same team and we're just sort of going through the conversation and they're curious about the process. And so for us, that had a massive impact. And really like, you can copy the card, but I don't think it's perfect. I think there's lots that we're probably going to change for next year. But we kept going with the same card because it's just our high level qualification criteria, right? It doesn't help us get into discovery, but that's what the back is for, right? And what we found was that the best cards didn't even you didn't check the boxes. They were writing the answers because you don't just want the surface level answers. You want sort of a deeper level understanding of like why that's important. And so what we noticed was that the best cards, the deals that closed had information written all over the back that had, much deeper level information than what was just in those tick boxes.
Awesome. No, that is really, really fantastic. I think that this is something that I am definitely going to do. Question for you here though. How do you, there's so many people in that expo hall. How do you drive traffic to your booth?
How do we drive traffic?
Yeah.
We don't do a ton to drive traffic. One of the things that, if you think about how a coral reef gets started, it's a couple of grains of sand. And then eventually more sand builds up and more sand builds up and more sand builds up. And I think when you're giving away swag at your booth, it's you attract a lot of people that are like, oh, they're giving away an Amazon Echo. They're giving away t-shirts. Oh, I want a t-shirt. Right. Oh, I want a book. And we've given away lots of books. And what happened was people would they sort of come in. They're like, okay, all I really want is a book or is that swag. And so you get these people that sort of seagull in and then head out. And it creates a lot of flow past your booth, but it doesn't create a lot of people that stop. And so what we recognized was that and I can't remember what the sort of psychological principle is, but it's sort of, it's the nightclub idea. It's like the nightclub wants to have a big line out front because then people assume, oh, wow, this has got to be the hottest nightclub in town. And what these cards did for us is it slowed the flow of traffic through. And we got less of people that were coming through just to grab swag and they were more curious. And what we've noticed is that almost every year we've had one of the busiest booths because you get, every single member of our team that's there is engaged in a deep conversation. We'll have people lining up and waiting just to talk to us. And so we don't do a ton to drive traffic. I mean, I think because of we're a little bit lucky because we have the sort of name brand of predictable revenue. Aaron wrote the book. Him and Jason wrote a book together. So I think people have an understanding of who we are. And that sort of makes them curious when they see our name. But I remember the last time I was there, we get a ton of people that came by and like, what is this predictable revenue? And they're just sort of curious. And then they're not stuck, but then they've stopped and they're ready to have a conversation with you.
Interesting. Well, this is really good insight here. We're, it's very difficult to drive quality traffic to your booth, right? And that is I think everyone's challenge. I'm just going to point to some questions here in terms of how do you maximize that? And this is a great idea. Is create the lineup in front of the restaurant, and then everyone wants to come. And if your branding has some explanation on what you guys do, right, then you're going to identify or rather line up the right people anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah. Over back to you. You had some other questions.
So I want to jump to, we've got a couple questions from Paul in here. Thank you so much, Paul. So Paul is asking, and I'm going to take a couple questions, and then, I do want to jump back to Lloyd shortly after that. But Paul's asking about the in-house media portals, at the social media partners, do they bring amplification value for conferences? So Paul, what I think you're talking about is the app and sort of the commenting, sharing. And I think that's one of the, like Lloyd, I mean, you can talk to this. This sounds like one of the pieces that you use to generate quite a bit of your traffic.
Yeah, the media portals and third-party social media and so on. So it depends on the conference, right? There's so much noise on social media that it's almost very difficult to find the right people you're looking for. Now, if you want just brand buzz, then it's different. I'll tell you, the couple of years that we did the photo booth, we had this really, really, really ugly dog, and right next to it we put an image of Jason Lemkin. And I said, and we shared a photo of saying, come to our get professional headshots. And then we put a before and after. and that drove some traffic. So if you do like interesting content like that, but it's almost like I feel, and Paul, maybe you can clarify what social media channels and partners you're looking at. But I feel there's so much noise on Twitter and there's so much noise on Twitter and the other SaaStr's specific channels that it just gets drowned. Like, it depends on who you're selling to. If you're selling to a CEO, they're not sitting there and looking at their Twitter feed. But what they might be looking at is a curated group that they're engaged in, right? So like there may be side groups, right? There may be a Facebook group. Like, for example, I know a lot of Canadians are coming to Traction. So I've done a somewhat decent job curating a Canadian group by one partnering with all the major incubators in Canada. And our booth this time on the expo floor is we've partnered with all the Canadian incubators and a few VCs. And we've set up a meeting space on the booth called Canada House. And we've set up this meeting space where all the Canadian entrepreneurs can come and take their business meetings. So it's just going to be some high tables and chairs and so on, and they can use that as their meeting workspace. And those are the kind of people we're going to attract.
And I understand you're giving away free shots of maple syrup.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I got to line that up. But see that's been more helpful for us. And then when you tie into this next question, and then the minimal thinking is better. I personally think most of the swag gets thrown away. All right. Unless it's something that's really, really thoughtful. Something that they can either use or something really cool. So we're not doing this year, but in the past, what we've done is we've given away T-shirts with like quirky quotes, which say it overall on the front. Like, I love it when you talk data to me, or things like that.
Yeah, I remember that one. That was great.
Yeah, and so a lot of people took it, but at the same time, were they the right lead? So it's like, hey, create curated experiences more than giving swag, and you can give swag to those curated experiences.
Mm-hmm. And I think what you're driving towards is, and I think the common theme here is, it's more about the quality of the lead, the quality of the interaction, as opposed to the quantity.
Exactly.
And I think with those giveaways, when you're giving away T-shirts, pens, whatever it is, right? Those are, you're increasing your reach, but you're not necessarily going as deep with each of those people, right? And like we talked about earlier, all that's going to do is create more hassle, more work. So if you're a marketing person, you're just trying to hit some numbers. There's nothing wrong with that. If you got goals, hit them. But I think it's like, if you're not being measured on sort of no matter who you are, whether it's in marketing, sales, event marketing, if you're not being measured on the amount of on the results that you're driving, and not just the number of badge scans, but the actual number of booked meetings, the number of closed deals, the number of pipeline that you've created, right? You're almost set up to your experience is designed, or the metrics that you have are sort of designed to get the wrong outcomes. Right. So I think it's the two sort of takeaways from what you're saying is really focus on quality, and two, focus on what is the output that you want from the event. What we all want is a pipeline and close deals.
Yeah, definitely. So Paul clarified his question with the media portals, and SaaStr's is doing that too. I don't know. It's not worked for me. Like we've posted all kinds of stuff there, and maybe it did. Maybe that drove traffic, but I don't know. Right? Like the Twitter, it depends on the conference. Like at SaaStr, I think people are watching Twitter, Instagram on passing. You got to do something. There's so much noise, even on the media portal, right? So SaaStr has this whole thing where everyone's posting all kinds of stuff on it, similar to what like TechCrunch and VentureBeat do at their conferences. Mm-hmm. But there's so much noise over there. You better do something that stands out, right? And again, even if you do something that stands out, like I don't know what, but like let's say I thought we saw very good results when we did the before and after picture, and like we amplified it, turned into GIFs and so on, and that drove traffic. The key thing is it driving relevant traffic? SaaStr has gotten so big right now that it's no longer just the founders and CEOs showing up. It is other people from teams, more junior people showing up, right? And so the founder CEOs are coming with their whole team. Now you may or may not have prospects you sell to in that team. And they may or may not be influencers. So now if you're doing like account-based marketing where you're saying, okay, my target market is a CTO, CEO, head of product, whatever, but then these three people are the influencers, now you got to segment that list and do creative stuff around it.
But yeah, you're totally right. There's so much noise on the in those channels.
I just noticed my webcam cut off.
Yeah. Let's see that beautiful face of yours and that sweet mustache.
Let's see if it's working. Is it working?
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Anne's asking if we'll share the recording. Yes, we will. We'll send it out once Zoom finishes processing it.
Are you going to edit out my mom or leave her in there?
Oh, I'm totally leaving your mom in. That's the best part.
Cool. Awesome. There's a few people I think who couldn't get in, so I'll forward you the email and maybe you can send it to them as well.
Yeah, sounds good. I think it happened last time, and I'm not quite sure. I do love the Zoom for the quality of the audio or the video, but we had a couple people last time that struggled to get in, so I'm sure that was a frustrating experience for them. If you're watching now and you couldn't make it in, sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on. We'll work on a way to fix it.
Awesome.
I got we get it. Yeah, let's get to Paul's question. I want to ask everybody, hey, we've got just a few more minutes here. So last chance, throw your questions in the Q&A button and let us know if you got anything you want us to address. If you got any questions, any thoughts, hit us up there. And I've got, we're going to go to Paul's last question here, and then I'm going to go back to Lloyd. So Paul's asking about booth design, floor placement, aside from swag. Do you find it plays a significant role?
I'll let you answer that and I'll take it.
My thoughts, the design, the placement, not really. From my experience, you want to make sure that you're going to be in a trafficked area, but you're going to be in the expo. Yeah, I'm sure there's some dark spots in there. But to be honest, like in the last couple of years, the first couple of years, we had some of the most premium, high traffic areas. And what we noticed was that it made for a real transient crowd. We were right next to one of the doors. And so we had hundreds of people zooming past us at all times. And it was just people walking by, they'd look at our site or look at our sign and they'd say, okay, cool. They'd stop. Do you have any swag? Okay. And they'd move on. And then the following year, we were in a slower part of the expo where we weren't getting as much traffic, but we did get a ton of people that, we were able to sort of create that, if you go back to the reef analogy, we were able to create that, that buildup of people, and that itself attracted everybody. And what we found was helpful is that it wasn't a huge pass-through area. So the people that did end up coming to that area were looking to engage with one of the sponsors, as opposed to just trying to get somewhere, whether it's a coffee station, a beer station, or into one of the sessions. What do you think, Lloyd?
Yeah, definitely. So the location, I think, plays an important part. This year, I looked at, and so when I asked them, where should I place the booth? There's like, oh, it's designed for equal flow throughout the conference, right? And I'm like, fantastic. Now I'm like, that's not necessarily true. because I think even we say that when we organize conferences, but the reality of the situation is there's few factors there, right? And so when I looked at the booth layout and the conference layout, what I look for is where are the doors and where are the biggest sponsors? Because I know even if I don't have the budget, I'm a small bootstrap company, Intercom will, Google will, and so on.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, near the doors, near these big guys, there's going to be traffic 100%. And so that's what we did. The other thing was, while we get like a subsidized booth, what I did was I didn't want something small. So I went and raised a bunch of sponsorship from all these Canadian incubators. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, I have a small booth. Why don't you guys throw in money on the pot? We'll combine it and make it a bigger booth. And then we'll co-brand it. So now all of a sudden, my small company is co-branded with 2 or 3 other big names. And we have this much, much bigger booth. And now it's like says Canada House at SaaStr's presented by Boast and all these other RBC. Like RBC is a household brand, right? It's like that. So that's what we did, and then position it by the door, close to all Googles and so on. So I know everyone now, the 3-4 partners are going to be driving traffic, and it's a combined booth turned into one.
That's great. I remember we're always typically next to lighter capital because they always they pull in a similar crowd that we're looking for. So strategically, if we can get a spot next to them, it's great because they're not a competitor, but they do have similar customers that we want to talk to, and I imagine you guys are in the same boat, right? Yeah. And, I think was it 2 years ago, they were giving away like VR headsets. Yeah. And they were joking with us that they're like, I think you guys should chip in on these headsets for us. I'm like, well, why is that? They're like, well, people came for our headsets and then they go stand in line to talk to one of your people. It's like they'd grab the headset and they'd turn and stand and wait for us. And we were giving away nothing.
And exactly that. You bring up a great point, and everything starts with your ideal customer profile, right? If you notice, everything starts with who's your ideal customer profile, and that person is in the center, and who all are their influencers and who all are selling to them. So if you do that, then all your event strategy is going to be centered around that. And one of the pieces is partnering with other people or being close to other people with similar audiences, because you're going to break the log with more people than just with one, right?
100%. I want to go to Trevor's comment here. Trevor's question. He's asking about how much of a commitment do you get from a prospect that comes by your booth? Like, do you have a goal of how far you want to take the conversation when you're at the show? Lloyd, why don't you take this one first, and then I'll jump in with my 2 cents.
Yeah. So I talked about this slightly. We talked about it's all like dating, right? Like, let's say you go to a bar and you meet a guy that you like and you want to chat with, and it's a crowded bar, right? But there's like a whole bunch of other people there that you want to talk to as well. I think, it depends. Let the conversation flow. If you get too pitchy, it's going to be viewed poorly. Right. And then all of a sudden you're a salesperson. I think your number one goal from this conference should be to walk away with X, and you need to define that X conversations lined up for after the conference. So if you've got enough commitment saying, Lloyd or Collin or Trevor, here's my number. It's interesting. Let's schedule a meeting next week for a half hour. That's a win. Mm-hmm. To me personally. And so from there, I take it naturally. Like, some people are super interested and they're eager and they want to hear more and more and more. And you tell them and you take that conversation along, and maybe you'll close it on the floor. But many people will start pushing. It's like, oh, this person is like walking through every feature and everything, and it's just too much and I can't handle it. Play that balance. I think if you walk with the goal of, I want to meet this kind of person, and more than meet, I want to walk away with, say, 20, 30 meetings post-conference, qualified meeting post-conference, and just do that. Behave like an SDR. Get those conversations going, pique their interest, see if they're a qualifier or not, and then say, hey, do you mind if I contact you after the conference for a meeting? Or better yet, while you're talking to them, say, how about this? It's an interesting conversation. What does your calendar look like? Everyone's there on their phone, right? Line up a meeting right there for the following week or the week after. Just line that up. Do that. Put it in their calendar, and then send them a note saying, hey, Trevor, great meeting you at the conference. We discussed this. by the way, we're throwing a happy hour, so come here and we'll have a couple of drinks together. If not, look forward to our call next week.
That's great. I'll echo almost exactly what Lloyd said. I think, how much of a commitment that are we looking for? We're looking for a meeting. We're looking for mutually agreed upon next steps. So, and I think the best way of doing that is getting something booked and meeting accepted on their calendar for the following week. All right. Maybe, if they're super interested, you could book something, say, hey, let's go sit down somewhere and I can, walk you through a little bit more. But I find the conference, like the expo area, is not a great place for pitching. And we lost your mic again, Lloyd. The conference area is not a great place for pitching. It is a good place to start the conversation, but it's not a great place to sort of have a real deep conversation. And so my goal is to make sure that I'm doing exactly what Lloyd said. We're acting like SDRs. We're making sure they're qualified, right? They're the right people that we want to be talking to. They have some pain. They want to do something. There's some motivation. And then I'm trying to book a next steps. And my perfect case is a meeting for the following week. In some cases, you can get the feeling that, hey, this person is more motivated. They want to do something right away. We had a guy in 2017 actually came by and paid at the booth, signed up on a 12-month contract.
How often did that happen? And was that for the self-service product or the fully managed?
That was a $60,000 a year product.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You guys managed everything for them.
Yeah, paid with a credit card. But he was so fired up about what we were doing. He had a big, he was super qualified. He was in a hurry. He had some big aggressive goals that he needed help with. And we were able to provide that for him. And he came back on the last day and he's like, you know what, I'm going to do this at the booth because I had such a good conversation with everybody. I want to sort of go through this together. And so that was a really exciting moment. Generally,
I could have many of those.
Was that?
I said, I wish I could have many of those, but that's like a unicorn.
Yeah. I think that was a real special case. He was very excited. It was one of those like perfect Bluebird deals. And definitely not what we're driving for. Cause we did end up having, he had an intro conversation with myself. He had an hour-and-a-half conversation at the back of the booth with a couple of our salespeople. He thought on it today. He came back the next day and he's like, yeah, I saw your proposal. I'm ready to get going. And so we sent him like the link to sign up and he pulled through. So I wouldn't expect that. I think the level that we're looking for is like booked a next step and we both agreed on the next steps. And that's really our goal. I think just on this topic, there's a really important piece to think about because 100% what Lloyd said, you got to think about your target market because obviously you're qualifying, right? And so as you're going through this, you're filtering through, is this person target market or outside target market? If they're inside target market, you're going to vary your pitch in the conversation. If they're outside of target market, you want to make sure that, hey, I can't provide any value for this person. You don't want to be taking up too much of your time with them and not to be disrespectful and saying, hey, get out of here. But keeping in mind that like, imagine you're an SDR on an inbound line and there's 10 other people waiting on hold to talk to you, right? You want to get to those 10 other people if you know this person isn't somebody that you can help, right? And so that's the sort of first piece. On the back end, though, what you need to make sure is as you're qualifying people, as you're sort of figuring out what next steps are, not everybody is going to be able to commit to a meeting then and there, right? Conferences throw everybody's sort of life into a bit of a... it's a bit of a wild ride when you're there because you cancel all your meetings for the week, everything gets pushed back, right? And so people aren't always willing to commit to next steps. And so a very important piece is to have map out the outcomes ahead of time and be prepared to sort of sort people into like 4 different categories. I booked a meeting with this person, right? They're super interested and I booked a meeting with them. They're not interested, or they are interested, and I wasn't able to book a meeting, but we want to get something. They committed to getting something locked in. The third is like they were interested, but weren't interested in taking a meeting right now. So like they're qualified, but they're not ready yet. And then they sort of weren't interested in taking a meeting, but you think that, and they weren't interested in the product, but you feel like they're a good fit in the future. Right. And so that's sort of that last one's your long-term nurture. And the other, so the middle two are those like, all right, I'm going to push a little bit harder on these individuals and having those set up, whether, no matter what sort of sales enablement tool you have ahead of time, if you've got campaigns ready so that when you get back at the end of the night, you can throw people into those sequences or cadences, I think you're going to make your conference experience so much easier.
Definitely.
So we got about 5 minutes left here. Lloyd, I want to ask, what's your top one or two sort of takeaways for, just to sum up what we've talked about here, right? Top piece of advice for people going to that are going to be at SaaStr's next week. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of what we shared was like pre-event planning, and sometimes it's tough to make that happen with like less than 5 days to go, right? We're on Thursday, it's next week. I like the cue cards idea. I like that. And maybe it's something you build into your CRM on the phone maybe, but I think that may be seen as poor when you're like talking to someone and filling out your phone. But I like that.
It does this. It'd be like if we're on this webinar and I'm sitting here sort of typing, and I'm not 80, so I don't type exactly like this, but I don't like the phone barrier in between, yourself and the customer. Maybe I'm just old school. Maybe
you draw it out on a notebook in the interest of time, and you take those notes, and then like you try to schedule something. I think that's important, right? The other thing I would suggest for people that are just going as attendees right now, and don't have any events planned or whatnot, think very deeply about your time, right? Your time is the most valuable thing you own, especially at the conference. You're a company or you have spent a lot of money to go there. There's all kinds of people there. Be deliberate about your ideal customer profile. Go through the application, the online portal, and find the people you want to connect with. If you know anyone's connecting with, maybe even figure out their emails and contact them. Don't be spammy, of course. Provide value. And gently ask if they want to connect on a specific topic. And I think one step better than that is them emailing people or contacting them and say, oh, let's meet. I want to talk about my product. Is organizing a brain date on the Brella app. And it could be around a challenge maybe that your business solves. And then inviting people saying, hey, I'm organizing a roundtable on the SaaStr's floor on this specific topic. I think you would add great value to the conversation. Do you want to join? And then here's how you register. And SaaStr's has made that possible, right? So like organize a bunch of brain dates. And I know a bunch of folks, well-known growth marketers last year, like Eric Sue, all they did was brain dates. All they posted was brain dates. Because now you're going as an attendee. You don't have booth budget. You don't have anything else going on. So you're like, okay, should I spray and pray at the conference? No, don't do that, right? What challenges your business solves? Create a thought leadership topic around that. Post it through brain dates. And then, of course, you can't just sit there and wait for people to join your brain dates. Go through the app, see who all you're targeting, and invite them to the brain date. If you invite 20, maybe 5 will show, and 1 will be a decent prospect for you. And do like a few of these. And I think SaaStr's has enabled non-sponsors to create sponsorship-like opportunities through these brain dates, and you have to hack it to figure it out.
You got to hack it and you got to hustle.
Yeah.
But I love it. Lloyd, my last sort of takeaway here, don't forget your sales training, right? We're here to qualify, have good conversations. And just remember, good questions plus great follow-up is going to give you the best chance to get ROI in your conference, no matter what you invested, whether you're a sponsor or you're just there to attend.
Yeah. If all this effort is dollars down the drain, if you do not follow up, right? If you do not, the way I look at it, and it's done well for me personally in my life in terms of building myself as a connector, is every time I meet someone, I do my best to walk away with one thing I can connect them with that's not tied to my business. And that's the principle I live by, is like, if I meet you, whether it's a VC intro, whether it's, I don't know, tickets to a baseball game or some piece of information, could be personal, could be professional, need a better accountant, whatever. I try to walk away with one thing that I can connect them to after that conversation. Then I do my best to connect them to that. And then the follow-up becomes very easy. Hey, Collin, we met. You said you had this issue. here's a link to solve it, or here's a great plumber. Can I introduce you to that person? Oh, by the way, we also talked about these 3 things. What's your schedule like?
Always providing value, Lloyd. I love it. Hey, I want to thank you so much. If anybody's looking to get in touch with Lloyd, I think the best way, hit him up on a brain date and through the SaaStr's app. Use your own magic against you. Same with me. I've got a brain date listed on there. So if anybody wants to jump in and talk conferences, talk outbound, I'm in the SaaStr's app. You can find us both on LinkedIn. We'll also shoot out a couple of the articles we mentioned after this. And Lloyd, I think we had we've got a draw for some SaaStr's, for a SaaStr's ticket. How do they find more about that?
Yeah, definitely. So we just randomly, what I said was I'll pick the most engaged person maybe, and just we're going to pick Paul.
All right. Randomly pick the guy that asked like 30 questions.
Right. Randomly pick the guy. I would have done random, but we can also do random. We can do probably another one random if you want to.
Perfect. Well, yeah, if you got the tickets to spare, Paul's all over the chat. I love it. All right. Want to thank everybody.
I'll let you pick the random. Just let me know. Pick and let me know.
All right, we'll do. I'll close my eyes. I'll throw something on my screen, and whatever it hits, then we'll throw that ticket your way.
All right.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks. Have a good one. Thanks for having me.
Lloyd. We'll see you at the conference, buddy.
See you at the conference. Hey, stop by the Canada House booth on the expo floor.
You betcha. Your free shot of maple syrup.
Yeah, and the guy with the biggest stash, the Stashster.
Will you let me wax your mustache?
Maybe. I don't wax it. It just stays up. Awesome.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lloyd.